The contract was absurd. 3 pages of standard legal boilerplate regarding damages and deposits, followed by a single, bolded addendum that felt less like a clause and more like a tombstone engraving. The tenant acknowledges that the landlord holds no liability for occupancy beyond the hour of 0300 hours. Total vacating of the premises is recommended nightly. Stay at your own risk. I signed it with a flourish of my pen, the skepticism practically leaking out of the ink. I am, or was, an investigative journalist specializing in the debunking of urban legends. I had slept in abandoned asylums in West Virginia, spent a week in the suicide forests of Japan, and held seances in the catacombs of Paris. I had never seen a ghost. I had never felt a cold spot that wasn't a draft, nor heard a voice that wasn't settling wood. 14 Blackwood Lane was just another job. It was to be the centerpiece of my book, The Architecture of Fear. The house stood in a forgotten cul-de-sac on the outskirts of London, a towering Victorian structure of soot-stained brick and weeping mortar. It looked like a bruise against the gray sky. It was narrow, impossibly so, squeezing upward between 2 derelict warehouses as if gasping for air. The windows were tall and thin, resembling closed eyes. As I unlocked the front door, the heavy oak groaning against the rusted hinges, I checked my watch. 4 p.m. I had 11 hours and 17 minutes until the witching hour. The legend was specific. It wasn't that people died at 3:17 a.m., it's that they ceased. They vanished. No struggle, no blood, no packed bags. Just gone. The police files I'd bribed my way into were maddeningly empty. 7 tenants in 10 years. All disappeared on their 3rd night exactly at 3:17 a.m. I intended to stay for 7. Upon entering, the smell hit me first. It wasn't rot or mildew, which I was accustomed to. It was the smell of ozone and stale electricity, like the air after a lightning strike, mixed with something copper-sharp. The hallway was long, lined with peeling wallpaper that depicted a repetitive, dizzying pattern of twisting vines that looked uncomfortably like veins. I set down my gear cases, hard-shell Pelicans loaded with the best sensory equipment money could buy. This wasn't a camping trip, it was a siege. I spent the first 4 hours mapping the house. 3 stories, a basement, and an attic sealed with nails so old they had fused with the wood. The geometry was subtle but wrong. The stairs tilted slightly to the left. The bedroom doorframe wasn't a perfect rectangle. It leaned, creating a subconscious sense of vertigo. It was a house designed to make you feel drunk. I set up base camp in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. It was the epicenter of the disappearances. I mounted wide-spectrum cameras in every corner, rigged motion sensors to the doors and windows, and placed digital voice recorders on the nightstand, the floor, and the windowsill. I taped a grid on the floor to measure any movement of objects. I was scientific, I was prepared, I was arrogant. The first night was a test of patience. I sat in a folding chair, drinking lukewarm coffee, watching the monitors. The silence of Blackwood Lane was absolute. No traffic, no wind, just the house settling. It sounded like a ship at sea, the timbers groaning under immense pressure. At 3 a.m., the atmosphere changed. It wasn't a temperature drop, it was a pressure shift. My ears popped. The air grew heavy, viscous, hard to pull into the lungs. I stared at the digital clock on my desk. 3:15, 3:16. I held my breath, waiting for the ghost, the demon, the intruder. 3:17 came. The numbers glowed red in the darkness. Nothing happened. 3:18. I let out a laugh, a sharp bark that sounded too loud in the empty room. Gotcha, I felt the whisper. I felt a surge of triumph. The legend was a lie. I went to sleep feeling like a king. The next morning, the sun didn't seem to rise so much as the gray simply got lighter. I reviewed the footage, 6 hours of static silence. But then I checked the audio waveform for 3:17 a.m. There was no audible sound, but the visual representation of the audio file showed a massive spike, a wall of noise that lasted exactly 60 seconds. It was a frequency below human hearing, infrasound. That explained the ear popping and the dread. The house was generating a resonant frequency that induced fear, a natural phenomenon likely caused by the wind through the chimneys or the plumbing. I spent the day writing, feeling smug. I began exploring the basement, a damp concrete box filled with the detritus of previous lives. Old chairs, damp boxes of books, a broken mirror. In the corner, I found a pile of shoes, just shoes. Left shoes, specifically. Dozens of them. It was odd, unsettling, but explainable. A fetish of a previous squatter, perhaps. Night 2. The air pressure shifted earlier, around 2:45 a.m. I felt a headache bloom behind my eyes, a sharp, rhythmic throbbing. I sat in the chair, camera in hand. This time, the silence was broken. At 3:10 a.m., I heard a sound from the floor above, the sealed attic. It sounded like marbles rolling across the floorboards. Clack, clack, roll. Then heavy footsteps. Not the creak of settling wood, but the distinct, measured pace of a man pacing. I grabbed the thermal camera and ran into the hallway. The ceiling above me showed nothing on the thermal imaging, cold blue. But the sound was there, heavy, physical thuds directly above my head. I shouted, "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped. I looked at my watch, 3:16 a.m. I waited. The second hand swept past the 12, 3:17 a.m. The house screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a vibration that rattled my teeth and blurred my vision. The hallway stretched. I mean that literally. I watched the door to the bedroom recede, the hallway elongating like pulled taffy, the pattern on the wallpaper writhing. The distance between me and my safety doubled, then tripled. I stumbled, vertigo slamming into me. I fell to my knees, clutching the carpet. The air smelled of burning hair. Then, as the clock hit 3:18, the hallway snapped back to normal with a violent lurch that threw me against the wall. I lay there, panting, my nose bleeding. This was no infrasound. This was a manipulation of reality. Day 3 was a haze. I couldn't leave. I tried to walk to the front door, but every time I approached it, a wave of nausea so potent it buckled my knees washed over me. I was being digested. I realized that the house wasn't haunted, it was hungry. I spent the day tearing apart the library on the first floor. Behind a false panel in the wainscoting, I found a journal. It belonged to Elias Thorne, the tenant from 3 years ago. The handwriting started neat and devolved into frantic scratches. It's not the time that kills you, it's the geometry. The house folds. At 3:17, the angles add up to something other than 360. It opens a door. I saw him last night, the man in the wall. He's made of plaster and wire, and he wants my eyes. I read until my eyes burned. Elias had theorized that the house was built over a thin place, a rupture in the skin of the world. The architect, a man named Wickham, had been an occultist obsessed with non-Euclidean geometry. He built the house to function as a trap, a mechanism to catch something, and the tenants were the bait. Night 3. The third night was when they always vanished. I barricaded the bedroom door. I had a flare gun, a flashlight, and a bottle of whiskey. I sat in the center of the taped grid. 1 a.m. passed. 2 a.m. The house began to groan, a low, guttural sound that came from the walls themselves. The plaster began to sweat. Beads of viscous, dark liquid rolled down the floral patterns. At 3 a.m., the lights died. Not just the bulbs, but my battery-powered lanterns. The darkness was absolute, heavy, choking. I clicked the flare gun, my hands shaking. 3:15 a.m. The temperature plummeted. My breath hung in the air as ice crystals. I could hear breathing. It was coming from the corners of the room. Wet, ragged breathing. "Show yourself," I screamed, my voice cracking. 3:16 a.m. The walls dissolved. They didn't fall down. They became translucent, revealing the skeleton of the house. But instead of studs and beams, I saw ribs and muscle. The house was biological. Giant, pulsing veins pumped black sludge where the wiring should be. And beyond the walls, outside, was a void. No London, no street, just a swirling gray abyss filled with floating debris, clocks, chairs, bones. 3:17 a.m. The floor beneath me vanished. I didn't fall down. I fell through. I landed in a space that made no sense. It was a corridor, but it went in all directions simultaneously. Gravity was a suggestion. I floated, turning, screaming silently. Around me were the others,
the previous tenants. They were suspended in the air like insects in amber. They weren't dead. Their eyes were wide, moving, frantic. They were screaming, but no sound came out. They were trapped in a single second of time, 3:17 a.m., a loop of eternal terror. And I saw the architect, Wickham. He wasn't a man anymore. He was the center of the web, a mass of elongated limbs and geometry fused with the architecture. His face was the clock face, his hands the hands of time. He reached for me. I raised the flare gun and fired into the clock face. The red magnesium flare exploded in the gray void, blindingly bright. The creature shrieked, a sound of grinding metal. The loop stuttered. Reality flickered. I saw the bedroom floor again, then the void, then the floor. I clawed at the air, swimming through the distortion, grabbing the edge of the reality I knew. I pulled. My fingernails tore, but I pulled. The clock ticked, 3:18 a.m. I slammed onto the floorboards of the bedroom, vomiting bile and blood. The lights flickered on. The walls were solid plaster. The silence returned. I lay there until dawn, weeping. I left the house that morning. I left my equipment, my clothes, everything. I ran until I found a taxi on the main road. I never went back. I never wrote the book, but I know the truth now. The house is still there. It's waiting. And sometimes, when I look at a clock and see 3:17, I can feel the floor drop away. I can smell the ozone and the rot. I am free, but part of me, a shadow, an echo, is still trapped in that room, screaming in silence, forever waiting for the minute to end.
The house did not welcome me. It tolerated me, like a host enduring an unwanted guest because of blood ties. High atop the crags of Blackwood Ridge, the sprawling Victorian estate sat like a rotting tooth in a dying gum line, overlooking a town that had spent the last century trying to forget it existed. My grandfather, Elias Blackwood, had died 3 weeks ago, leaving me the sole heir to a fortune built on coal and cruelty, and this house, a monument to his paranoia. I hadn't set foot in the manor since I was 6 years old. That was 30 years ago. My memories were fragmented, hazy vignettes of dust motes dancing in shafts of cold light, the smell of old paper and pipe tobacco, and the door. Even now, standing in the grand foyer with my bags, the silence of the house pressing against my eardrums, my mind drifted to the door. It was in the pantry, behind a heavy oak shelf. I remembered the day the contractors came. I remembered the cement mixers, the heavy industrial chains, and the look on grandfather's face, a mixture of terrified relief and profound sorrow. They hadn't just locked the basement, they had entombed it. They poured concrete over the entrance, welded steel plates over that, and then stacked shelving in front of it, as if pretending the lower level of the house simply didn't exist. "Keep it closed, Thomas," his will had read, the handwriting shaky and desperate. "Whatever you do, let the concrete hold. The roots must not be disturbed." Naturally, human curiosity is a disease that festers in the face of prohibition. For the first week, I obeyed. I spent my time cataloging the library, arranging for the sale of the antique furniture, and trying to ignore the settling groans of the timber. But the house was alive with a peculiar energy. At night, lying in the master bedroom, I could hear a low-frequency thrumming, like the idling engine of a massive machine, vibrating through the floorboards. It wasn't the boiler. The heating system had been dead for years. It was coming from below. By the second week, the scratching started. It wasn't the scurrying of rats. It was slower, deliberate, long, wet drags against stone, muffled by feet of concrete. I tried to tell myself it was the pipes or the shifting foundation, but the dreams told me otherwise. In my sleep, I walked down corridors made of meat and bone, guided by a voice that sounded like my grandfather screaming underwater. I would wake up in a cold sweat, the taste of copper in my mouth, standing in the pantry, my hands pressed against the cold steel plate that covered the concrete seal. On the 15th day, I found the journal.
It was hidden inside a hollowed-out volume of an encyclopedia in the study. The entries were sporadic, descending from the meticulous notes of a businessman into the ravings of a lunatic. Elias wrote of the substrate, a geological anomaly he had discovered while expanding the wine cellar in 1993. He described it not as a cavern, but as an organ. He wrote of whispering walls, of geometry that shifted when you looked away, and of the things that had started to come up the stairs. The final entry, dated the day before the sealing, was a single scrawled line. God forgive me, I fed it to keep it quiet, but it is always hungry. That night, the thrumming became a roar. The floor of the pantry cracked. I stood there with a flashlight, watching a hairline fracture zigzag across the concrete slab I was sworn to protect. A smell leaked out, a thick, cloying scent of ozone, rot, and ancient stagnant water. It was the smell of a tomb that had been breathing. I needed to know. The madness of the isolation, combined with the rhythmic thumping from below, shattered my resolve. I went to the garage and retrieved a sledgehammer and a pickaxe. It took me 3 hours to break through the concrete. It was poor quality, brittle with age, or perhaps rotted from the inside by whatever dampness lay beneath. When I finally broke through the steel plate, the air that rushed out didn't just smell, it felt. It was a physical wave of cold, humid pressure that knocked the wind out of me. Below the jagged hole lay the original wooden stairs, surprisingly intact, swallowed by a darkness that my flashlight beam struggled to penetrate. I descended. The air grew heavier with each step, the temperature dropping until I could see my breath pluming before me in the LED beam. This was not a normal basement. The blueprints listed a wine cellar and a storage room. What I walked into was a labyrinth. The first chamber was mundane, which made it worse. It was a time capsule of 1994. Cardboard boxes labeled tax returns and winter clothes sat on metal shelves, but everything was covered in a thick gray slime, a fungal web that connected the boxes to the walls and the floor. I touched a box, and it disintegrated, revealing not clothes, but a mass of fused organic matter. Leather jackets melted into wool sweaters, colonized by vibrant, pulsing mold. I pushed deeper. The architecture began to fail. The hallway stretched too long, tilting at a subtle, nauseating angle. The walls changed from brick to rough-hewn bedrock, and then to something else, a smooth, dark material that felt like polished obsidian, but yielded slightly to the touch, like hardened cartilage. I found a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, a sign stolen from a factory, bolted to the rock. Behind it lay what looked like a surgical theater.
Rusted gurneys stood in a circle around a central drain. On the trays were tools that defied explanation, scalpels with curved, serrated blades, retractors meant for anatomy much larger than humans, and the jars. Rows and rows of mason jars lining the shelves, filled with cloudy formaldehyde. I wiped the dust from one. Inside floated a finger, but it had too many joints. Another jar held an eye the size of grapefruit, its pupil a horizontal slit. Grandfather hadn't just found something down here. He had been studying it, experimenting on it, or perhaps it had been experimenting on him. I found a tape recorder on a desk, the batteries miraculously preserving a sliver of charge. I hit play. Elias's voice, younger but strained, crackled out. Subject 4 has assimilated the biological matter. The walls are expanding. It mimics what it consumes. I saw my own face in the wall today. It spoke to me. I clicked it off, my heart hammering against my ribs. I turned to leave, to flee back to the surface and pour fresh concrete, but the door was gone. Where the frame had been, the wall had knit itself together, a smooth patch of gray flesh stone. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I spun around. The only way was forward, deeper into the dark. The tunnel widened, opening into a vast subterranean cavern that shouldn't have been geologically possible beneath the manor. The ceiling was lost to shadow, but far above I heard the dripping of water, or something thicker. The floor was uneven, littered with what looked like white stones. As I walked, the crunching sound under my boots made me look down. They weren't stones. They were bones, thousands of them. Small animal bones mostly, but scattered among them were femurs and skulls that were unmistakably human. In the center of the cavern stood a structure that mocked the house above. It was a replica of the manor's foyer, built entirely of the black cartilaginous stone. It was a dollhouse for a giant, a mimicry of home. I walked through the open front door of the shadow house. Inside, the furniture was formed from the same black substance, fused to the floor, and sitting in the armchair facing the cold hearth was a figure. It was wearing my grandfather's smoking jacket, preserved against the rot. I approached slowly, the flashlight trembling in my hand. "Grandfather," I whispered. The figure didn't turn. I walked around to face it. It wasn't Elias. It was a husk. The skin was papery and translucent, stretched over a framework of black roots that had burst from within his body. His eyes were gone, replaced by glowing patches of bioluminescent fungus. But the mouth was moving, a low, wet mumble. "Thomas, you came. The seal broken." "What is this place?" I screamed, the sound deadened by the fleshy walls. "The stomach," the thing that was once Elias wheezed. "We are digestion." The house around me began to shudder. The walls of the Shadow Manor pulsed. Veins I hadn't noticed in the stone began to glow a sickly crimson. The floor beneath the armchair softened, turning into a quagmire of acid and mud. Elias's husk began to sink. "Run," he gurgled. "It wakes." A roar tore through the cavern, a sound so loud it vibrated my teeth. From the darkness beyond the shadow house, something massive shifted. I saw a limb, if you could call it that, slam down into the light. It was pale, wet and segmented, the size of a redwood trunk, tipped with grasping human-like fingers the size of a man. Then another limb, and another. A face pushed through the gloom, a nightmare amalgamation of every living thing the basement had consumed over 30 years. It had the eyes of a dog, the teeth of a shark, and the structure of a man, scaled up to godlike proportions. I ran. I didn't look for a path. I scrambled blindly through the bone fields, the creature crashing behind me, smashing the Shadow Manor to dust. The ground shook with every impact of its limbs. I found a narrow fissure in the rock, a throat-like passage leading upward. I squeezed inside just as a massive hand slammed against the opening, fingers raking the stone inches from my face. The climb was an agony of claustrophobia. The tunnel was tight, slick with slime, and it breathed. The walls expanded and contracted, squeezing me, pushing me back. I clawed my way up, my fingernails tearing, screaming into the dark. I could hear the creature howling below, a sound of frustration and hunger that promised eternal torment. After what felt like hours, I saw a grate above me. Light, dim moonlight filtered through. I pushed against it. It held. I battered it with the flashlight until the lens shattered, then with my fists. It gave way with a screech of rusted metal. I pulled myself up and collapsed onto wet grass. I was outside. Rain lashed against my face. I rolled over and looked at the house. The manor was groaning. The windows bulged outward as if filled with high pressure. The front door blew off its hinges and a slurry of black ichor vomited onto the porch. The basement wasn't just down there anymore. It was coming up. It was filling the house. I scrambled to my car, the keys fumbling in my bloody hands. As the engine roared to life, I looked back one last time. The house was changing. The roofline twisted, forming a jagged spine. The windows elongated into eyes. Blackwood Manor was standing up. I drove until the gas tank drew dry, and then I walked. I burned the deed, I changed my name, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes when I'm in a quiet room, I can hear it. The thrumming, the scratching from beneath the floorboards no matter where I am. We sealed it for 30 years, and in doing so, we let it ferment. We let it grow strong, and now I know the truth. The world is just a thin layer of skin over a hungry throat, and I have opened the mouth. I am a listener. That is the simplest title for a job that defies simple explanation. Officially, I am a quality assurance technician for a subcontracted data firm operating out of a sub-basement in Northern Virginia. Unofficially, I am a janitor for the collective nightmare of the human race. I scrub the timeline. I delete the impossible. Every day, millions of emergency calls flood the 911 networks across North America. Domestic disturbances, fires, heart attacks, cats in trees. 99.9% of them are mundane tragedies or false alarms. They are processed, recorded, and archived by standard dispatch centers. But there is a filter, an algorithmic sieve known as Project Echelon 9 that sits between the caller and the dispatch. It listens for specific keywords, specific frequencies, and biometric stress levels that shouldn't be humanly possible. When Echelon 9 catches one of these anomalies, it redirects the call here, to the black server, to me. My job is to listen, categorize, and usually delete. These are the calls that were never supposed to exist. I sit in a room that smells of ozone and stale coffee, illuminated only by the harsh blue glow of 3 monitors and the flickering LEDs of a server rack that hums like a dying hornet. The walls are soundproofed with acoustic foam, thick enough to muffle a gunshot or a scream. Tonight, the queue is heavy. The moon is full, the atmospheric pressure is dropping, and the boundaries between what is real and what is not are wearing thin. I adjust my headphones, the leather cracking against my ears. I take a sip of cold caffeine and click the first file. File ID 991A, Zeta. Timestamp 0333 AM, location redacted, Ohio. There is no static. That's the first bad sign. Digital lines usually have a noise floor, a gentle hiss of the universe existing. This line is dead silent, a vacuum of sound. Then, a voice. It sounds like wet gravel sliding down a metal chute. 911, what is your emergency? The automated dispatcher prompt asks. The prompt was triggered, but no human operator picked up. The sky is blinking, the caller says. It is a woman, elderly, her voice trembling not with fear, but with a terrible awe. Ma'am, do you require medical assistance? The bot asks. No, she whispers. You don't understand. The stars, they aren't gas, they are eyelids, and they are opening, all at once. They are looking at the house. The light, it's not light, it's milk. It's pouring through the chimney. I watch the waveform on my center monitor. It's spiking erratically, creating jagged red peaks that look like a mountain range in hell. In the background of the call, I hear sound, a low, rhythmic thumping. Thump, 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 like a heartbeat, but the size of a cathedral. It's beautiful, the woman says, her voice wet now, bubbling. The milk is warm. It tastes like memories. Then the sound of tearing, not fabric, but something denser, meat. The waveform flatlines instantly. I exhale, my breath visible in the chilled air of the server room. I tag the file. Class 4, hallucination, biohazard potential. I hit permadelete. The file vanishes. The Ohio woman never called. She likely died of a gas leak or a stroke. That is the official story. That is the truth I curate. I rub my eyes. The isolation of the bunker plays tricks on you. Sometimes I think I hear the thumping from the calls continuing in the silence of the room, vibrating through the floor tiles. I click the next file. File ID 772B Omega. Timestamp invalid. Dates reading 1924-11-14. Location mobile cell tower, Miami, Florida. The timestamp error is common. The system struggles to process temporal anomalies. I hit play. He's in the wires, a young man screams. The audio quality is atrocious, heavily distorted by what sounds like gale force winds. He's crawling through the fiber optics. I can see him in the modem lights. 911, state your location. The bot drones. Stop the data, unplug it. He's digitizing my fingers. Oh God, look at my hand. It's pixelating. It's distinct squares of... The scream that follows isn't human. It's a digital screech, the sound of a dial-up modem amplified to 140 decibels. It shifts pitch, rising higher and higher until it passes the range of human hearing, but I can still feel it in my teeth. The spectral analyzer on my screen shows a pattern in the noise. I lean in close. The frequency bars aren't random. They form a shape, a face, a screaming face embedded in the audio spectrum. I recoil, my chair rolling back across the concrete floor. I know that face. I saw it on the news 3 days ago. A missing persons case. A graphic designer who vanished from his apartment, leaving behind nothing but a pile of silica sand and a melted router. I delete the file. My hands are shaking. I shouldn't be seeing patterns. That's a symptom of exposure. We are supposed to rotate every 4 hours, but my relief Henderson didn't show up tonight. I'm on hour 9. The room feels smaller. The shadows in the corners of the server racks seem to stretch, reaching towards my desk like fingers of oil. I need to focus. File ID 0000, void. Timestamp present. I hesitate. The 000 prefix is reserved for internal routing. This call didn't come from outside. It came from inside the network. I click play. Silence. I turn the volume knob up. The gain hisses. Still silence. Then a sound so faint I almost miss it. Breathing. Slow, ragged breathing. It sounds wet, like someone breathing through a lung full of blood. Who is this? I whisper into my own mic, violating protocol. We never speak to the recordings. The recording shouldn't be able to answer. It's a static file, but the breathing stops. Arthur, the voice whispers. It sounds like me. I freeze. My heart hammers against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stare at the waveform. It's moving in sync with the voice, but the file duration is 0 seconds. It's not playing a recording. It's streaming. Arthur, don't turn around. I am paralyzed. The voice is coming from the headphones, but it sounds like it's originating from directly behind my chair. The air in the room drops 10 degrees in a second. I can see my breath clouding the monitors. You've been deleting the warnings, Arthur. My own voice says through the headset, thick with malice. The weeping mother, the pixelated man, they weren't glitches. They were the heralds. What do you want? I stammer, my hand hovering over the master kill switch that cuts power to the rack. We want to be heard. We want to be saved. You put us in the trash bin, Arthur. You sent us to the null space. Do you know what it's like in the data graveyard? It's cold. It's so crowded. I spin around in my chair. The room is empty. The heavy steel door is sealed shut. The fluorescent lights buzz aggressively. There is no one there. But the shadow cast by the server rack, the one in the far corner, is wrong. It doesn't match the object casting it. The rack is rectangular. The shadow is shaped like a man with too many limbs. I rip the headphones off and throw them onto the desk. They clatter loudly, but the voice continues, not from the cans, but from the room itself. It's vibrating out of the acoustic foam, out of the floorboards. You can't delete us anymore. I scramble for the phone, the hardline emergency phone connected directly to the upper levels. I lift the receiver. There is no dial tone, just the sound of that wet gravel voice from the first call. The sky is blinking, Arthur.
The old woman says. I slam the phone down. I need to leave. I grab my keycard and rush to the blast door. I swipe the card. The LED on the reader turns red. Access denied. I swipe again. Access denied. I pound on the steel. Let me out! Henderson, anyone! The monitors behind me flare to life. All 3 screens turn bright, blinding white. Then text begins to scroll, rapidly pouring down the screens like black rain. Incoming call. Incoming call. Incoming call. The speakers mounted on the wall explode with noise, a cacophony of 1,000 screams, a choir of the damned. It's every call I've ever deleted. I hear the man drowning in his own blood. I hear the child who claimed his dog was speaking Aramaic. I hear the woman who said her reflection walked away without her. They are all screaming my name. I fall to my knees, covering my ears, but the sound isn't acoustic, it's psychic.
It's drilling into the parietal lobe of my brain. The room begins to change. The acoustic foam on the walls starts to drip. It liquefies, turning into a thick black sludge that runs down to the floor. The smell hits me, rotting copper and ozone. The floor tiles crack, and from the fissures light bleeds out. Not electric light, but the milky, wrong light the woman described. I crawl back toward the desk, seeking cover under the console. The server rack, the black server, is smoking. The metal casing is glowing cherry red. It's melting. From the molten slag of the server, a hand emerges. It is made of wire and bone. It grips the edge of the desk. Then another hand. Then a head. It has no face, just a smooth surface of black glass reflecting the chaos of the room. It pulls itself free from the machinery, standing 7 feet tall, a golem of technology and hate. The screaming stops instantly. The silence is worse. The entity tilts its head. It points a jagged finger at the monitor. I look. The screen shows a live feed. It's a camera angle from the ceiling of this very room. I see myself cowering under the desk, and I see the entity standing over me. But in the video feed, the entity isn't a monster. It's Henderson. My relief. Henderson is standing there holding an axe, his face a mask of blank terror. Arthur, Jesus Christ, what are you doing to the server? Reality fractures. I look at the monster in the room. It's a shifting mass of glitching pixels and wire. I look at the screen. It's Henderson. You're not real. I scream at the monster. Neither are you, the monster replies. Its voice is the compilation of every deleted call. We checked the logs, Arthur. There is no employee named Arthur Pennahollen. There never was. My blood runs cold. I look at my hands. They are flickering, translucent. I can see the linoleum floor through my palms. No, I whisper. You are the Echelon 9 algorithm, the monster says, stepping closer. The heat radiating from it burns my skin, or what I thought was skin. Format C, the Henderson thing on the screen says. He raises the axe. The monster in the room raises a claw made of serrated hard drives. Wait! I scream. The axe comes down. The claw comes down. There is no pain, only a sudden shift in perspective. I am no longer in the room. I am everywhere. I am traveling through copper wire at the speed of light. I am a signal. I hear a ringtone. Bring, bring. Someone picks up. 911, what is your emergency? A bored dispatcher asks. I try to speak. I try to scream for help, but I have no mouth. I have only the data of 1,000 nightmares compressed into a single file. The sky, it's blinking, I hear myself say, but it's not my voice. It's the old woman's voice. Ma'am, stay on the line, the dispatcher says. I try to change the words. I try to say, I am Arthur. I exist. He's in the wires. My voice shifts to the screaming man. I am not the listener anymore. I am the call, and I am doomed to repeat this loop, jumping from tower to tower, phone to phone, terrifying strangers, begging to be deleted. I feel the algorithm watching me. A new listener, someone sitting in a dark room, smelling stale coffee, hovering their finger over the delete key. Please, I think, press it. Erase me. I hear the click. Darkness. But not oblivion, just the cold, crowded storage of the recycle bin. I am not alone here. The weeping mother is here. The pixelated man is here. They turn to me in the digital dark. Welcome back, Arthur, they say in unison. And then the ring tones again. The job listing was buried deep in the classifieds of a localized dark web forum, the kind of place you only looked when you owed money to people who owned pliers and blowtorches. It was succinct. Night Watchman, the Sterling Voss monolith. No experience required, $5,000 a week. Do not apply if you have a history of auditory hallucinations. I didn't have hallucinations, but I did have a debt that was going to get my legs broken in 3 days. I applied. The interview was a formality. It took place in a porta-cabin outside the perimeter fence. The man, Mr. Kellen, looked like he hadn't slept since the Nixon administration. He handed me a flashlight, a heavy iron keyring, and a thick binder bound in gray leather. "Don't open the doors on the 14th floor," he said, his eyes fixed on a stain on the carpet. "Don't look at the mirrors in the basement bathrooms for longer than 5 seconds. And if the elevator starts going up when you press down, lay flat on the floor and cover your head until it stops." I thought he was hazing me. I laughed. He didn't. He just handed me the badge and pointed to the structure looming behind him. The Sterling Voss monolith. It was a brutalist nightmare. A slab of windowless concrete rising 40 stories into the smog-choked sky, surrounded by acres of cracked asphalt. It looked less like a building and more like a tombstone for a giant. My first night began at 1900 hours. The lobby was a cavern of polished black granite and echoes. My footsteps sounded like gunshots. The security desk was an island in a sea of shadow. I settled in, reviewing the CCTV monitors. There were 60 screens, most showing static or empty, dust-choked corridors. The silence was heavy, physical. It pressed against my eardrums. I tried to read a book, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. Around 200 hours, I started my first patrol. The binder, the rule book, stated I had to physically check the fire doors on every 5th floor. I took the service elevator. It smelled of ozone and copper. The mechanism groaned, the sound vibrating through the soles of my boots. I started on the 35th floor. It was an open-plan office, stripped bare. No desks, no chairs, just pillars of raw concrete and the stains of where carpet used to be. The dust was thick, undisturbed for years. Yet, as I walked, I smelled stale tobacco smoke. I swept my flashlight beam across the room. The light caught something in the far corner. A chair. A single wooden chair facing the corner of the room. I walked over to it. It was bolted to the floor. Scratched into the concrete wall at eye level for anyone sitting in it were the words, "It breathes when you sleep." A chill that had nothing to do with the drafty ventilation system ran down my spine. I turned to leave, and for a split second, my flashlight beam dragged across a shadow that seemed to detach itself from a pillar and slide into the darkness. I told myself it was just nerves. By night 3, the isolation was gnawing at me. The building groaned. Thermal expansion, Kellen had said, but concrete doesn't sound like weeping. I was in the control room, eating a cold sandwich, when monitor 14, showing the 14th floor hallway, flickered. The 14th floor I was forbidden to enter. The camera was grainy, black and white. In the center of the hallway, standing perfectly still, was a figure. It looked like a mannequin, smooth and featureless, but it was wearing a security uniform. My uniform. I grabbed the radio. "Hello? Who is this?" Silence. On the screen, the figure turned its head slowly toward the camera. It didn't have a face, just a smooth expanse of flesh. Then the camera feed cut to black. I sat there, heart hammering against my ribs, staring at the static. I checked the other screens. Empty, empty, empty. But when I looked back at the glass reflection of the control room, I swore I saw movement behind me. I spun around. Nothing but the lockers. Night 5 brought the silt. That's what the rulebook called it. If you encounter the silt, retreat immediately and seal the bulkhead. I found it on the 20th floor. I was doing a routine check when I stepped into a puddle. The roof wasn't leaking. I shone my light down. A black, viscous liquid was seeping out of the electrical sockets, pooling on the floor. It wasn't oil, it was too thick. It moved with a sluggish intentionality. As I watched, the puddle expanded, flowing toward my boots against the gradient of the floor. It was hunting me. I backed away, heart racing. The liquid surged, forming a pseudopod that lashed out like a whip. I slammed the fire door shut and spun the locking wheel. I could hear it slapping against the metal on the other side, wet and heavy. I ran back to the elevator, my breath coming in ragged gasps. When I got back to the lobby, I checked the monitors. The 14th floor camera was obscured, covered in a thick layer of black slime. Week 2 was a descent into madness. I stopped sleeping during the days. The sun felt wrong, too bright, too artificial.
I only felt real inside the monolith. The building was changing. Corridors that should be straight curved imperceptibly. Stairs led to floors that weren't on the elevator panel. I found a room on the 8th floor that was fully furnished like a 1950s living room, pristine, with a TV playing static at full volume. There was a bowl of fresh apples on the table. I took a bite one. It tasted like ash. The auditory hallucinations started, or maybe they weren't hallucinations. I heard conversations behind the walls, muffled arguments, crying, the sound of a piano playing a discordant tune. I started talking back to them. "What do you want?" I screamed at the drywall on the 30th floor. "Let us out," a voice whispered, right in my ear. I spun around, swinging my flashlight. Nothing. I began to read the logs left by previous watchmen, hidden in the back of the binder. They were rambling, terrified scrawls. "The geometry is hostile. I saw myself on the stairs today. I looked older. The basement isn't the bottom." That last one stuck with me. The elevator went down to B3, but the plans in the security office showed a B4 through B10.
I had to know. The money didn't matter anymore. The building had its hooks in me. I found the service hatch in the floor of B3 inside a utility closet. It was welded shut, but the weld had rusted through. I pried it open with a crowbar. A blast of cold, rot-scented air hit me. A ladder descended into absolute darkness. I climbed down. B4 was flooded, knee-deep in stagnant water that reflected my light like black glass. Floating in the water were thousands of papers, personnel files. I fished one out. It was a photo of me, but in the photo, I was screaming, my eyes gouged out. The date on the file was 3 years in the future. I dropped it, backing away, the water churning around my legs. Something surfaced in the distance, a pale, bloated shape. It slipped back under without a splash. I scrambled up the ladder, sealing the hatch, but the building knew I had seen. The lights in the stairwell blew out, one by one, ascending toward me. I ran up the stairs, my flashlight beam jerking wildly, shadows elongated, grasping at my ankles. The walls began to pulse, contracting and expanding like the throat of a living thing. I could hear the concrete grinding, the rebar screaming. I made it to the lobby, but the front doors were gone. Where the glass entrance should have been, there was only a solid wall of concrete. I was sealed in. The monitors in the security booth all flickered on simultaneously. Every single screen showed my face, looking at the camera, smiling a smile that was too wide, filled with too many teeth. The speakers crackled. "Shift is not over, Elias. The archive must be maintained." I barricaded myself in the control room. I had a flare gun in the emergency kit. I realized the only way out was up. The roof. I had to get to the roof. I took the stairs, avoiding the elevators. I could hear them moving on their own, crashing up and down the shafts at impossible speeds. The climb was a blur of terror. On the 12th floor, gravity shifted. I was walking on the wall, the hallway stretching out vertically. On the 25th floor, the silt was pouring from the ceiling like a waterfall. I had to sprint through it, the substance burning my skin like acid. On the 33rd floor, I met Mr. Kellen. He was standing in the middle of the hallway, facing away from me. "Mr. Kellen!" I shouted. He turned around. He had no eyes, just hollow sockets filled with the black silt. "You looked at the mirrors, didn't you, Elias?" he gargled, his jaw unhinged, dropping to his chest. I fired the flare gun. The magnesium slug hit him in the chest, igniting him. He didn't scream. He just burned, illuminating the corridor in blinding red light. I ran past his burning effigy, the heat searing my face. I reached the 40th floor. The roof access door was chained. I could hear the building roaring now, a sound like tectonic plates grinding. The floor beneath me buckled. I smashed the lock with the crowbar, adrenaline giving me hysterical strength. The chain snapped. I kicked the door open and stumbled out into the night air. But it wasn't the night air. Above me wasn't the sky. It was a ceiling, a massive concrete ceiling, miles high, with giant industrial lights acting as stars. I wasn't in a building. I was inside something much, much larger. I ran to the edge of the roof and looked down. The city below was a model, a sprawling, infinite labyrinth of concrete mock-ups, and thousands of other monoliths just like this one, stretching out forever. I fell to my knees. The wind up here smelled of recycled air and ozone.
The door behind me slammed shut. The handle turned. I was trapped on the roof of a building, inside a world of concrete. I looked at the flashlight in my hand. It was flickering, and from the shadows of the roof's ventilation units, they began to emerge. The previous watchmen, pale, gaunt, their uniforms tattered, their eyes leaking the black silt. They didn't attack. They just gathered around me, a silent vigil. One of them stepped forward. It was the figure from the 14th floor. It handed me a clipboard. I looked at it. It was a new schedule. My name was at the top. Shift begins, the thing whispered. And as the artificial stars buzzed overhead, I realized the truth. I hadn't taken a job. I had been processed. I stood up, took the clipboard, and turned to face the endless concrete horizon. The terror faded, replaced by a cold, gray numbness. I was part of the architecture now.